I used to think that grief had this sort of linear way of moving through, right? Like you had to move through stages of grief and you had to, um, and I think it goes back. I was just thinking about this when my grandfather passed away and I was little. I was like 9, 10. And I remember we were standing at a friend's house and the friend said to me that morning that my grandfather had died. And I was like, oh no. And I wanted to go out and play. And what they wanted me to do was sit and feel the whole emotion of not having my grandfather. I think they were prepared to have to deal with my emotions and me being upset. And I think it caught them off guard because I just wanted to go play. Like, and part of that was I knew my grandfather was a guy who loved to play, and I was 9, so it sort of made perfect sense. And I think about the times that I've lost people, and specifically like my mom in the last 2 years, and how grief has hits me at just like weird times when I just don't think it's going to happen. And one day I saw this animation. It was posted by I think her name is Lauren Henschel on she posted on Twitter, on her Twitter account. It was sort of a visual representation of what her doctor had shared with her about grief. And I was going to share that with you. I'm going to try and draw it. So she talks about like we have a box, and on the outside of the box is sort of life, all the things that are happening in our life. And then there's this big button that is in our box. And when we're grieving, at first, it's really a really big ball inside that box, and it keeps banging on the sides and hitting this button. And this button is where you're activated and strong emotions come up and you feel things um, in that space, right? So this ball starts off really big, and then over time, they talk about how, the box is still there, the button is still there, but grief has got a little smaller, but it still hits the walls and eventually hits that button. And that's the thing that catches you off guard. And I know I didn't draw this in the most beautiful way, but I wanted to share this with you because I think for me, it was a point this morning when I woke up and I just remembered this image and I was like, oh, that's what's been happening. And it made more sense of the feelings that I've been feeling of late. But it also reminded me that there's no schedule where you end grief with things that you've lost. And sometimes that's not people, right? Sometimes that's identities. Sometimes that's jobs that we were really tied and connected to. And so I think that visual of like it starts off as this big enormous ball that's bouncing around a room, and on one side is a button, and every time it hits that, that's like an ouch, or it creates some yuck, right? And we have to deal with it. We have to think about how we're going to deal with that in that moment, or we ignore it, and that ball might stay big. But over time, hopefully, what's happening is that ball is getting smaller. Doesn't mean that we are not remembering the people or the identities or the jobs that we had. It just means that they're not as a they're not causing this pain point so much. And as that ball gets smaller, it bounces around the box. But what it's doing is it's missing the button more times because it's smaller. And the smaller it gets, the less times it hits that button, but it still hits the button. And so it's just a reminder for me that grief is not something that you get to the end of and you're over. It's something that you continually, for your whole life, managing and thinking about. And I like to think sometimes that as I've got further away from when my mom died to now is like those beeps or those bumps where it says ouch, where it hits that button are actually memories that are fun memories of my mom and what she gave me as I was growing up.